Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar presented by the Office of Gift Planning, Bequests from Start to Finish. My name is Jim Hodson, and I'm the Director of Trust and Estates here at the University in the Office of Gift Planning. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Kia Gordon.
Good morning. My name is Kia Gordon. I'm our Senior Associate Director of Gift Planning with the University of Chicago.
We're really pleased that you are joining us today, and we're thrilled to know that University of Chicago alumni and friends are looking to us as a resource for philanthropic planning. I just want to remind everyone that these slides are not intended as legal advice, and that we always recommend that you consult an attorney or other professional regarding your particular situation. So with that all set, let's review our agenda for today. I'm going to start today with a brief overview of Bequest at the University of Chicago, just kind of touch on a few key terms and also highlight why these gifts are an important source of support across the university. Thereafter, I'm going to invite Kia Gordon back for a conversation on the run-of-the-mill life cycle of a bequest at the University of Chicago. And then finally, we'll leave some time for audience Q&A at the end of the program. Okay, so with that all set, where I want to start is provide a little bit of a framework for today's conversation. When we're talking about a bequest, we're referring to gifts that are received by the university from our alumni and friends upon death that come from an estate. And so broadly speaking, an estate consists of all assets that an individual owns when they pass away. But these can flow to the university and to other named beneficiaries in a few different ways. One of the more common ones you hear about is probate. This is a court process. It's a legal process that gives recognition to a last will, and it appoints a representative, either an executor or an administrator, to administer an estate. And everything kind of plays out in the court process until the point where you can distribute all assets to the beneficiaries and the probate is terminated. A trust kind of plays out in a similar manner, the difference being that it usually takes place outside of court. The trust document names a trustee who's responsible for overseeing the management and investment of assets, and then eventually their disposition to named beneficiaries. A third way that assets can pass out of an estate is by beneficiary designation. And so this is a mechanism where an owner of an account can be a retirement account, such as an IRA, or a financial or brokerage account, tells the financial custodian who they want the account to go to when they pass away. This is also known as a payable on death or transfer on death account. You fill out a form with your finance institution. You designate the dollar amounts or percentages of your account that you want to pass to certain individuals or charities upon your death. And the financial custodian carries out your intentions when you pass away. There are some advantages to designating these assets to beneficiaries, including to charities. IRAs in particular provide a tax savings. And also, these are things that can be passed along to your intended beneficiaries immediately upon death. You don't have to wait for a potentially lengthy probate or trust administration to play out. And in the case of a charity, the money can be put to work right away. And then just real quick, bequests are a really important source of fundraising at the university. We estimate that about $30 to $40 million is received annually in the form of bequests. And these provide support for multiple areas across the university, the college, graduate divisions, professional schools, and the hospital system as well. And they tend to come with a broad array of purposes, from scholarship support to funding particular types of research, and also just the general support for the university's highest priorities at the moment. Also, bequest commitments are a way to cement a relationship with the university. Office of Gift Planning invites you to join our Phoenix Society, which is a legacy society of like individuals who have demonstrated a commitment to the university via a bequest. And this can serve also as an inspiration to other donors to follow suit and to really, demonstrate how this type of particular support is so important for the university's longstanding prominence and success as well. So with that quick overview, I'm going to have Kia come back to the conversation, and we're going to talk about the life cycle of a bequest to the university.
Thanks, Jim. I'd like to acknowledge that the questions that we've assembled here are the typical questions we receive from a lot of our supporters. These are the types of conversations that we, as the Office of Gift Planning, are able to have one-on-one with our supporters. So use this as a guide. Again, we're hoping that we'll get lots of questions in the chat, but I'll be positioning myself as though I'm a donor asking these questions. So to begin, we'll start with an initial question. I'm thinking about including the university in my plans. Where should I start?
So good question, Kia, and this is definitely a good place to start. And I think you need to initially consider two questions up front. These relate to the how and the what. So the first one is, how am I going to establish my bequest for the university? What mechanism? So I talked earlier about a will, a trust, or beneficiary designation, and as three potential vehicles that you can use to effectuate your bequest. And then once you've kind of figured out where this bequest is going to fit in within your overall estate plan scheme, what the second question is what do you want your bequest to do when it's received by the university? So is there a particular area of the university that you want to support, and for what purpose? This could be, again, like scholarship support, fellowship support, or a particular type of research. And as a reminder, the Office of Gift Planning is here to consult with you and your advisors on the how. And we also have relationships with colleagues across the university to help kind of flesh out the what, the ultimate purpose of what your bequest is going to support. And then once you've kind of reached those threshold, decisions, you need to go take steps to execute on your plan to include the bequest to the university. And this can take place by having your attorney update your estate plan, your will, or your trust, revising your beneficiary designation that you have on file with the financial custodian of a particular account, and just kind of taking the steps to make sure that your plans contain the full scale of your gift to the University of Chicago. And our office is here. We can provide you with specific language for you to share with your attorney, just to drop right into your will or your trust. And if you have plans to make a bequest via a beneficiary designation, we can also provide some relevant details about what type of information the institution might like to know, including our tax ID number and address. Sometimes these beneficiary designations don't leave sufficient room for you to capture the full extent of your intent. We can also draft what we call a letter of direction, where you spell out all the details of the nature of your support for the university, and we sign it as well. It'll kind of govern how we'll use the bequest when it's received.
Thanks, Jim. Once plans are finalized, a question that we often receive is whether someone should share documentation of their bequest to the university. And if so, why is this necessary?
So, I think there are several important reasons why we ask our donors to share the final documentation from their estate plan that references the University of Chicago, even if it's just a redacted portion, and we don't need to see anything else, or at minimum at least an email with the language that was ultimately dropped into the estate plan. It's important for both us and for you for a few different reasons. One, we're able to get eyes on the language and confirm that it's accurate, that it reflects your stated intent, and that it's something that carries out the purpose that you've indicated you want to support at the university. It also ensures that we can properly allocate the gift upon its eventual receipt. In other words, that we can accomplish your intentions and your goals in keeping with any relevant university policies. Another reason is that when you share your details of your bequest, it allows us to include your commitment in the university's fundraising and campaign progress efforts. As I mentioned earlier, this can really serve as an inspiration to others to follow suit, and can demonstrate, I think, a broad support for this type of gift to the university. And then another reason is that when you share your commitment with us, I mentioned earlier the Phoenix Society, it really helps us acknowledge our gratitude for your commitment and your support, and make any plans in anticipation of the future gift. Hopefully that will receive long down the road, but it's just a way for us again to, I think, express our gratitude and how this gift will really be impactful here at the university. And just a quick remember, I kind of touched on it a little bit. When we ask you to provide us with documentation requests, it's not our intent to pry into anybody's affairs, private affairs. We're not interested in who else are named as beneficiaries or the structure of the overall plans. We really just want to know what the wording to the gift for the gift to the university states, again, to ensure that it meets with your precise wishes. We also keep all this information confidential. There's a form I have up on the screen here that we ask you generally to complete when you're submitting documentation. It basically ensures that anything that you share with us will be stored securely and will be for the eyes of the Office of Gift Planning only. That way, it's not something that we just broadly broadcast to the university community at large. It's something that we take pride in keeping confidential and for our eyes only.
Can you share a cautionary example regarding an undocumented bequest?
That's a great question as well, Kia. And I think what's important to remember here is that as a nonprofit, a not-for-profit institution, we're bound to follow our donors' express instructions on how we use their charitable gifts. And when it comes to bequest, these instructions are going to be contained within the four corners of a last will or trust. It's not our role to second guess or to read into a language that says something, interpret it on our own accord, right? We're bound to follow what you have put into writing, that's what we have to do. And so there have been a few cases, I think, that I've come across where we've learned of a gift only at the time that we actually realize the bequest, when someone's passed away. And we get a copy of the final will or trust, and we're surprised that the language is not reflective of what maybe we were told in conversation, or it's otherwise deviates from kind of a history of support for a particular area of the university. And frankly, there have been a few cases where an attorney got the final language wrong, or where perhaps the university was named in multiple places in the documents, but the wording was different. They didn't match up. We actually had this exact case happen recently. We kind of worked out some language on the use of a bequest. And when the donor was willing to come forward and share the final version of their plans, we saw that the language that we had all kind of understood would be incorporated into the estate plan was different from what we had agreed on. And it was something that, because someone didn't share with us the documents, we were able to correct it and get it corrected and make sure it was in keeping with what the donor's actual intent was.
I'm curious, if I have included the university in my plans and something changes, for example, with my desired purpose of my gift, what should I do?
So the answer is it depends, and you're going to hear that a few times today. So there are some cases where it might be beneficial for you to have your attorney update your will or trust, particularly if you're already making other changes, and might as well wrap in your updated plans for the university. If you, on the other hand, already have a general bequest in your plans for the university and you want to specify or flesh out the nature of your support, or if you intend to make your bequest via a beneficiary designation, you may be able to work directly with our office, skip the trip to a lawyer, and we can prepare what's called the bequest letter of direction. I mentioned this earlier. And basically it spells out all the details regarding your bequest, whether it's to support a particular school or unit or initiative, or if you think your gift might reach an endowment minimum. And here's just a brief sample of what that document looks like. As you can see, it's a way for you just to indicate that you've included a bequest to the university in your plans, and to leave some space to spell out exactly how you want the university to use your gift. Great thing is, if your plans then change again, no need to go back to your estate planning attorney. You can come right to our office. It's something that we also sign Doesn't bind you. Your intentions remain revocable during your lifetime, but it just governs the purpose of the bequest if it does ultimately come to the university, and something that we offer here as well. Whatever your situation, again, just don't hesitate to reach out to our office. We can work through your particular situation and kind of give you some guidance on the best approach.
That's great to know. Another question I sometimes receive is I've made plans for a bequest, but I want to know whether there's a way to see that bequest have impact now.
Absolutely. You might not be surprised to know that the university is always grateful to get funds in the door now. And so we do work with some of our alumni and friends who are interested in making, I guess, what you could call maybe a seed gift. It's basically a way to make a gift during lifetime. It creates impact now. That this way you can see and the university can demonstrate how we are going to use these money in keeping with your intentions. You'll see that during your lifetime, and if you are satisfied and everybody's happy with how things are working out, you can potentially enhance your support with a larger gift in the future via a bequest for the particular programs that you care about most.
We also want to cover a common question, which is what happens to my bequest to the university when I pass away?
All right, so second time today, you're going to hear the it depends. So I outlined earlier the mechanism that you've used, the how, whether it's a last will, a trust, or beneficiary designation, also happens to influence how we learn about your request, and can also impact how soon someone has the authority to start taking steps to administer your estate, contacting beneficiaries, and even making distributions to your intended recipients.
So, who does my representative notify after my passing?
So that's our office as well. We, in addition to working with our community on structuring a bequest or stating a purpose, we also handle the estate settlement. There are a few things we do here when we hear from an executor or trustee. We monitor the progress of the estate. We also coordinate with some of the colleagues in the various divisions that will benefit from the bequest to start putting plans in place for the eventual use of the gift once it's received.
So, how does the university partner with my estate?
So here we have an open line of communication with your state representative. Oftentimes it's a two-way street. We might need to know a few things from them, but they also potentially need some information from the university as well to carry out the estate administration. And then we stand by to receive your gift once it's ready to be distributed. And this can take a different amount of time, but basically, yeah, we stand by. We're ready to accept the funds when the administrator is ready to send a check, and make sure it's used for your intended purpose. And my background is, before I came to the university, I spent about 12 years in practicing law and trust and estate administration. So I'm always ready to have a conversation with your state representative. And I also think I've got a good understanding of why various unknown factors may ultimately delay distributions, and we're certainly patient here on our end, because different things can kind of crop up in the estate administration context that can cause some delay.
And what assurances do I have that the university will honor the terms of my bequest?
This is also a good question, and I think it kind of tracks back to what I talked about earlier, as our obligations as a not-for-profit institution. We're obligated to follow your instructions, for our donors' instructions. And when it comes to gifts that are at an endowment level, there are laws that have been adopted by Illinois that control how we can invest your endowment gift, and then spend it in keeping with your purpose, which again is governed by the directions that you've set forth in your estate plan. We're also more than willing to report directly to your representative or any other family members or loved ones on how the university plans to use the gift, and then once it's received, to demonstrate thereafter that we have indeed spent the money as you've stated in your plans. If it's an endowment, again, it's at a higher level, this gift level, but this, like, the scope of reporting can and occur as much as on an annual basis. We can include a detailed financial report that demonstrates endowment performance and also how the payout has met with your specific intended purpose.
In general, how long does it typically take for a bequest to be distributed to the university?
All right. Well, I know you're all waiting. This is one more time. I think this is the final time, hopefully, is that it depends. There are a bunch of different factors that can influence the timing of when the university will receive your bequest. First of all, the vehicle, the how. With a will or trust, there can potentially be a more lengthy administrative process. When it's the beneficiary designation, we're able to interface with the financial custodian right away. And fill out whatever paperwork they require to access the funds, and then begin to put them to work to your charitable purpose. Also, the type of bequest can impact how quickly we receive it. Just from my experience, fixed dollar amounts that you specify in your plans can generally be paid out earlier in the course of a trust or estate administration, as opposed to a percentage of a net estate, where you need to know what all the fees and expenses have been before you can calculate the percentage shares passing to the beneficiaries. And then there's just, I touched on a little bit. There's some unforeseen issues that are commonplace in the estate and trust administration context. These can have to do with the liquidity of certain assets, the court process for probate in the particular state that that you live in. Some can maybe be more dragged out than others. And other things that we can't even anticipate that might fall upon the estate to handle before they're in a position to actually pay out any funds to beneficiaries.
And what happens to my bequest when it is eventually received?
So this is actually not too different from what happens to a lifetime gift, depending on the purpose or the amount. What we do is we take the funds and we deposit them and we attach them to your express written instructions, whether those be in your last will or trust or a document that you've executed with our office that detail how the gift can be used. For example, the language from your plans that specifies the intended purpose, or if we're at an endowment level, the terms of the endowment agreement. And if the gift benefits a particular school or unit, they can go ahead and put the funds to use right away and begin spending on the purpose that you've indicated.
And how can my family or other loved ones learn about the impact of my bequest?
So at minimum, we can always acknowledge, provide written acknowledgement to your family of our gratitude. But again, we are always willing to report on the impact. This can be for both expendable and endowed gifts. And if there is a particular school or unit or division that's benefited from the gift, they'll be more than happy to get on the phone with your family or other loved ones, discuss again the impact, share how the support has been so meaningful, and potentially even meet with your family if that's what they would like to, again, just acknowledge your gratitude and demonstrate firsthand how these are making a real difference in the lives of students here.
And now, what are some of the most common challenges with the university's realization of the donor's bequest, or perhaps the use of the donor's bequest?
So challenges that we kind of have to navigate on our end. One of the more common is lack of notification. This also includes from financial institutions when we're dealing with beneficiary designations. Sometimes we just don't learn about the bequest for months, or in some cases even it's from experience more than a year. So we don't know that we're in your plans. We can't do the things that we do to start putting everything in place for the receipt of the gift. And we're kind of in the dark. Another reason why, especially if you are dealing with a beneficiary designation, we have information on our website and that we can provide you as well that gives the best address for the financial institution to send notice, just to make sure it's not doesn't get lost in the large scale of the university's mail system. Another issue that I come across is lack of communication with an estate representative. Maybe sometimes we'll receive notice about your generous bequest, and then we don't hear anything. And potentially, months have passed, and maybe we ask politely for an update just to find out what's going on. Again, we're patient, but we just want to know how things are progressing. And sometimes we don't get any of that information, and it makes it difficult for us to again put plans in place to make sure that these funds are put to use. And then a last one, and this doesn't happen too often, but every once in a while it does. We ask for the excerpt from your plans that details how the university is to use your gift, and we don't receive it, either because we're ignored or there's a refusal to provide the information, even sometimes when it's public record, if your last will has been admitted to probate. And then I mentioned earlier, we have to look to your estate plan to guide us on how to use the funds. And so even with just that little excerpt that mentions the gift to the university, without, again, not knowing who the other beneficiaries are or the overall structure, it's really important for us to see your written instructions, and so that we can carry those out.
What are some other things that might delay the university's receipt of my bequest?
So I think the most common, one of the more common ones, is liquidity of assets, particularly again where the university might be named as a percentage beneficiary. So this is where the estate representative has to sell real estate or potentially liquidate other complex assets like closely held business interest. Sometimes these partnership interests don't have a ready market, and you have to wait a period of time for the partnership to be wound down before funds become available to make distributions to beneficiaries. Another issue, I think, and it's not super common, but it crops up now and again, is where your estate representative either lacks experience or fails to seek support from an attorney or other professionals to move things along in a quick manner. Sometimes your estate or trust administration does not become a priority, and this can cause things to drag on perhaps a little bit longer than they otherwise would need to. And then litigation sometimes can happen in estates even when you don't expect it. Sometimes things happen, and this can kind of put a hold on any beneficiaries getting their shares until that's resolved. There's just a few, I think, of the things off the top of my head that might impact or delay the university's realization of a gift request.
And how do I anticipate or address some of these issues?
So, there are going to be some things that are unforeseen, so you can't get out in front of everything. But some thoughts. Think really hard and long about who you're going to ask to serve as your executor or trustee. Make sure you're confident that they're both up to the role, able to tackle any complex issues, or be willing to, again, procure support from professionals who can help them navigate through the process as well. Also, I think sharing your intentions with your estate representative and with your family members can be helpful as well. I think you want to make sure that everybody who's going to be involved in the process are invested in realizing your intentions, whether they be charitable or otherwise, and that just having everybody on the same page and explaining why your gift to the university or to other charities or other individuals is contained within your plans and why that's important to you, and hopefully getting them to encouraging them to kind of take it on in the sense that they're fulfilling your goals.
Okay. And just a couple more questions. What recommendations might you be able to offer regarding the selection of an estate representative, such as an executor or a trustee?
So that's a good question. And I think you want to think about someone who is trustworthy, but also efficient, is knowledgeable about your plans, and again, is invested in fulfilling your intentions, including any charitable gifts. And I said earlier, willing to delegate, knows where they are experienced and where they could use some help from people who are experienced, from professionals or other individuals who have estate settlement expertise. Just want a quick note, the university can unfortunately not serve in this role. There are sometimes attorneys or other professional individuals who are willing to act if you don't have a family member or loved one who you think is suited for the role. And there's even some financial institutions that have trust and estate departments. These can come at a little bit more of a cost, but the trade-off is efficiency. These institutions have detailed protocols in place about how they manage estate settlement. They generally are good about communicating with beneficiaries and creating kind of a clear timeline on how they plan to effectuate your bequests.
Can you describe any other actions that might help facilitate the administration of my testamentary gift?
Sure, and I covered this at the outset. Really, just speaking with us, speaking with our Office of Gift Planning, just to make sure that at the language that you plan to incorporate into your plans can be carried out. It's also, I think, helpful to provide your eventual representative with like a roadmap. This can be done outside of your estate plan, where you list the names and any other contact information for all of your beneficiaries, whether they be universities or others, so that they know who to contact when the time comes. And sometimes, again, this may not be clear from the actual documents, but it's something that you can put together as part of your broader estate plan arrangement. And then, also sharing, I guess, or having somewhere for them to access the ultimate fiduciary to access a list of where your assets are, where they're located, any other special instructions. This could be even passwords and things like that. Keep it secure, but make sure that they can have access to this information once you've passed away, so that they can begin taking the steps to administer your estate and carry out your intent.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'd like to now move to audience questions, and we've had some fantastic questions come through the chat. We'll do our best to get to all of these questions, and if we have not gotten to them, we'll hopefully hear from you and be corresponding directly via email with the additional remaining questions. So let's start off. How do I increase the amount of my bequest if I've already established that in my plans?
So typically, what you're going to have to do is go back to your attorney in this scenario and update your will or trust. It may impact other gifts that you've set forth in your plans. So increasing the amount, if it's not a percentage, would involve updating your will or trust.
Great. And now, what if my bequest is specific to a specific school or a degree? If that bequest that I've already established is specific to a school or degree and a student changes majors, what happens?
So your gift can't be earmarked for a particular student. You can indicate that you want to support a certain school or division here at the university. If you intend, if for whatever reason you decide that you want to direct your support elsewhere, again, I mentioned that there's different ways you can do this. You can update your estate plan directly with your attorney, or we are here to put together like the letter of direction, I called it earlier, that is an agreement with us that directs how we will use your gift for whatever you desire ultimately to support.
And is the money that I give via a bequest invested in perpetuity?
So it is if it's an endowment gift. So just to kind of, I guess, maybe set the stage for that, we have two different ways that we kind of craft support to the university. An expendable gift is something that the university can put to use in its entirety right away, to whatever priority our donors indicate. An endowment gift, on the other hand, is generally at a certain threshold, depending on the purpose. And the idea with that is that it's invested over the long term. It does exist in perpetuity, and we spend only a portion of the income or the payout on an annual basis, but it lasts forever. And those kind of have particular language around the terms and what's required. And again, I mentioned earlier, there are laws in place about how the university can invest and spend that money over time.
Can you give any specifics about endowment fund minimums?
So again, it depends on the purpose, and these are also fluid. So I suggest you contact us, or if you're in contact with someone else who works in alumni relations and development for a particular school unit, to ask what the endowment level is, depending on the type of support. It can be different for a scholarship fund versus um, fellowship, or for research, when you get at the level of like establishing a named professorship. They all have different endowment levels, and these can also change over time as well. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Um, do wills that include bequests have to be modified or rewritten if I move to a new state?
So this is a good question, and so the way that wills are, when they're offered for probate, they're all governed by particular state law, and I think on the most part, the answer is probably going to be no. If you executed your will in compliance with the laws of the state that it was signed in, it'll still be admissible for probate in a different state if you move thereafter. Um, that said, or if you're dealing with a trust, it's probably a good idea to revisit your overall plans with an estate planning attorney every few years. When we were doing estate planning before I came to the university, we recommended 5 years, but it's kind of at your discretion. And if other things are changing, or you are already planned to make maybe other revisions to your plan, it wouldn't hurt to at least get a consult with an attorney in your new state, just to make sure you're not missing anything.
Okay, so a sort of related question. What if I die in another state?
So this is also a good question. Typically, the probate for your estate takes place, if it's a last will, in the state where you pass away. It's not to say that there can't be a secondary probate that's opened up in another state where you have assets, for example, real estate. That's kind of a simplified process because you already have your primary probate administration taken elsewhere, where someone's been appointed to handle your estate affairs. For a trust, it probably matters less. Obviously, for beneficiary designations, it doesn't have any impact as well. So hopefully that answers the question. And I mentioned this earlier, but it could even be like another country there, which can kind of create another layer as well. But yeah, it can get a little more complicated, but it doesn't ultimately really impact who gets the money. It could just maybe affect the timing or the process that your representative has to go through, dealing with another state potentially.
And who sells the securities in my estate?
So if depending on the provisions that you've set forth in your last will or trust, if securities are going to be sold, it would fall within the purview of the court-appointed executor or the named trustee. They'll have authority to collect your assets, to liquidate anything that needs to be sold, and to make other decisions. Sometimes it's beneficial to direct securities to certain beneficiaries outright, as opposed to selling them. But it's all decisions that they will be tasked to make, either individually or consultation with an expert, such as an attorney who handles estate settlement.
Okay. Um, thank you. So then we have the question about creating and endowing scholarships. What particular information is worth knowing in creating and endowing scholarships?
Okay, so I think there's a couple things. One, I think well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. What part of the university do you want to support? What division? Is it the college? Is it a graduate division? There may be language that differs based on whether you're talking about undergraduate versus graduate students. I think you also want to consider, what's going to be a meaningful endowment level, not just now, but down the line. I think we all know that historically, educational costs, particularly for undergraduate education, have increased over time. And so, perhaps an endowment payout now that might make a meaningful impact on a student's, life. 50 years from now, will that be the case? So just think about, kind of what it will take, I guess, to to have a meaningful impact both today and then down the road as well. Those would be a couple of different considerations I think as well, and just fleshing out if there's any other particulars that you want to think about in the type of student you want to support. And if you have kind of a particular scenario that you want to play out, making sure you speak with either our office or someone else at the university to match that with university policies, and so everybody's on kind of on the same page.
Right. Here's a question that's been submitted in different form. What happens if the original bequest purpose ceases to exist? Or slightly different, what happens if a department or a subgroup to which I have listed my trust is no longer in existence?
So you're gonna. I thought I was done with it, but you're gonna get the it depends one more time. The best case scenario is that you've built language into your plans, and this is something that we think about too when we're putting language together for you to either put in your estate plan or in the bequest letter of direction. That kind of provides for an alternate arrangement if again if the purpose is not in existence when the gift is realized, or if it is and then things change down the road. This can allow for the university to repurpose the gift in something that's as closely aligned as possible, and have every assurance this is our goal is to meet with your intentions. So we try and find a purpose that matches it to the best to the greatest extent possible. And there are it's rare, but there are some cases where if that language doesn't exist, and we can either work directly with your estate before the funds are paid out, or if it's something where we've realized and things change down the road, there are processes that Illinois has set forth for how we can engage the court to repurpose your gift, make sure it still, again, meets your intent to the greatest extent possible, even if it's not like precisely with what you've worded in your plans. And this only can happen on our end. We can't just run off again and change what you've done unless it's really impossible, because like you mentioned, a particular program is just no longer in existence at all.
A different type of question. Can you explain how annuities are used in giving a bequest?
So I think I'd kind of maybe unpack this one a little bit more. So maybe it's a conversation we can have after the program. There are ways that you can establish, I guess, what we call life income gifts. So these are testamentary trusts through your estate plan to support others during their lifetime, where you kind of set forth the terms in your plan. You make sure someone else receives a stream of income during their lifetime, and then once they pass away, the university receives their shares. But these are all its share. But these are all like things that are a little more nuanced. Another reason why it's important to have a conversation with our office when you have kind of a thought in mind and think about, we can kind of, I guess, consult with you on ways that might be carried out.
Very good. Thank you. Another question about endowment levels. So do endowment level donors ever establish time-limited bequests, not to be held in perpetuity, but to be invested and spent over a term of years, such as 20 or 30 years?
So that I'm not going to say that's not possible, but it's something that you need to talk with the university about how you want to, I guess, maybe have an endowment, a gift that functions like an endowment. But yeah, it's for a particular term, and there's different things that we're going to have to maybe talk with you about, and how we're going to set that up, what the term's going to be, and other factors as well. What we're going to do with what's left over when the term ends, things like that.
Very good. Thank you. And I think this is really our last question. When it comes to, you mentioned the confidential statement of bequest form, is this something that a donor can access readily, or how can they go about doing that?
So we can email that to you if you reach out to us. It's also available on our Alumni and Friends website, our Office of Gift Planning and Alumni and Friends website. We'll have that link up in the final slide you'll see here shortly, and yeah, so that's either way, just let us know how you want to go about receiving that document. And
Wonderful. I believe that's our last question. Thanks, Jim.
I caught one more in the chat. I'm gonna try and address real quick. I think it asked whether a bequest can be distributed before probate is over, before a probate administration is closed, and the same occurs for a trust. And the answer is a yes. It's actually not uncommon. If you have a specific dollar amount, those can be paid out before the probate is closed if the representative has confidence that there's sufficient assets to cover all expenses and fees. And if it's a percentage amount, I know I mentioned earlier that you don't know the precise amount until everything's at the end, but it doesn't mean partial distributions can't take place prior thereto, before everything's closed out. It's within the I guess discretion of the representative to decide when to send out, I guess, some initial distributions, how much to do so, and make sure they keep enough held back to cover any fees and expenses that might crop up before everything can be wrapped up in full. Well, I think that we've reached the end of our presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for all the great questions. Kia, thank you so much for engaging with me in a conversation about bequests at the University of Chicago. We hope that you found some of the information useful and that you'll be inspired to consider a bequest as a way to support the University of Chicago. Just a reminder, there's going to be a brief anonymous survey that's going to appear once you leave the meeting. We value your opinion. We ask that you complete the survey. We always invite us to join you online at giftplanning.uchicago.edu. There you can find not only the confidential statement form, but other resources as well that relate to philanthropic support for the University of Chicago. And we also hope that you'll continue to use the Office of Gift Planning as a resource. We're here. We're happy to talk with you, so don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at our next information session and wish you all a wonderful day.